The pros under TRESA for a seller who wants to disclose the contents of competing offers, the biggest benefit that I can see is that they can encourage a buyer who's close but not quite the top offer that they really want. They can encourage them, if they're not too far apart, to come up to where they need to be and get the best offer. They can do it auction style and kind of work the offers, I don't want to say work the offers against each other because it sounds so sleazy, but they can do it auction style where people go up incrementally as needed up to their maximum budget, and the sellers know that they can encourage that openly with transparency. So I think that's an advantage to the sellers.
Now the sellers also, though, as an advantage to them, they get to choose whether they want open bid or a closed bid from the beginning, but they can also change it during the process. So a seller could choose, and this is the way I kind of see this happening. We're in a bit of a different market now. They're not the way they were with competing offers as we've experienced in the last couple of years, but there are still some happening. So what would happen in the heat of competing offers was that it was always closed bid, so buyers were flying blind completely. And you would often have the one buyer who would just blow everybody else out of the water. So if you had a property that was listed at $599 and holding offers, most of them would be around the $6 to $625, $649, and then you get one guy that would offer $750. And it was like, hey, this is great for the seller.
Yep. We saw that over and over and over again. And we tried to describe it to people, and it was hard to describe without being able to show them the actual offers. But it happened over and over and over. One buyer would blow everybody else out of the water.
Exactly. So with that being the case, a seller would never want open bidding from the beginning. Because if that one person who offered so much more money was aware that they were that far over, they could use one or two means to back out of the deal. But now, if the seller decided to start closed bid to see what was on the table, and if that one high offer didn't exist, they could then switch it to an open bid to help get the offers up that way, having the buyers know what they're up against.
In smaller increments. I think, my opinion, is that this is actually a flaw in TRESA. That a seller being able to change their mind back and forth multiple times throughout the process, I don't love that. Because it's not fair to buyers to be under the impression that we're doing things a certain way and then to change the game rules on them. I don't love that.
And it complicates things now too, to change, be like, oh, so our sellers have decided to change their mind, they're going to go this way, and then no, we're going to go back the other way. So it's going to create some complications there. Now, what would you say would be a con for the sellers with this process?
I think you touched on it. The biggest downside to the seller would be that that one buyer who's absolutely desperate to buy the house is not going to have to blow anybody out of the water. They can just work with what's on the table and just go up only as much as they have to be the best offer. We didn't mention, though, some of the intricacies of transparency here is that the seller gets to decide which parts of the offer they're going to share. They can share just the price. They can share the closing date. They can share any other details, the inclusions, what the buyers are asking for. They can choose the elements of the offers to share with the other buyers. We still have to, by the way, disclose the number of competing offers. That's
never changed.
But it's up to the seller whether they want to share one piece of it, the whole thing, whatever, and they get to change their minds on that too.
Mm-hmm. And realistically, this whole, obviously price is like super important, but in a situation like this, the complication is that an offer is not just about the price. You can have a great offer price-wise, but the closing may not work. It could be loaded with conditions. It could be asking for so much. They could have so many representations and warranties that
they could have a small deposit that makes them a less solid buyer.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's a lot more to it. So there's going to be, if it does go to more of an auction style, which they've been doing this in Australia for a while, but the way they do it there is you're literally standing on the front driveway of the house and people are just walking up and walking back, just giving new bids on the property. I don't think that's going to be the way it's going to be here. So it could draw out the process a lot too.
It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. I got a question for you. What do you think under TRESA the benefits to the buyers could be?
I think definitely the benefit to the buyer is that they will have a choice whether or not they want to participate, obviously, in a blind bid, even if it starts as an open bid. So I think a lot of buyers, this is what they've wanted. They've wanted the ability that, yes, if we're going to go in a multiple offer situation, I want to know what I'm up against, because it was difficult for us too, right? Because even as agents, when there's multiple competing offers, we don't know what people are offering on the other side. Yeah. So now buyers will have that full, if the seller is elected to go open, they'll know, which is fantastic. Yep. You can see what's there and you can choose your limit of where you want to go. But if, for example, it's a closed bid and the seller wants to change to open, you can have a clause in there that would prevent your offer from being revealed to the other parties,
right?
Which would opt you out of that process if you didn't want to continue participating.
Yeah, the clause would probably say something like, if the seller elects open bidding at this point or transparent negotiations with disclosures, my offer is null and void, and they're out if they don't want to be part of that. But I also think that the benefit to some of the buyers, because we experienced this during the competitive years, where some buyers realized the next day that the price that the property sold for is something they would have paid. They lost out for an amount that became really frustrating because it was only a couple thousand over, and if they had known, they would have continued to negotiate and maybe got the house they wanted. So I think that's a benefit to the buyers.
That is definitely a benefit. I feel like people will also be a little bit more comfortable going up when they know that, because trust has always been an issue. When things aren't open, how do you know what to trust? You know, you would know how many other offers there are. That's fine. But the other offer is much higher than yours. What does that mean? There was always this cloud that you were just guessing, and you didn't know for sure whether or not you would feel comfortable, if you would feel comfortable with that.
You always felt like someone was lying to someone. That was how it was.
So now it'll be a lot more clear cut that way.
So under TRESA, there's got to be a downside for buyers too. What would you say the downside is?
The downside for buyers would still be that if the seller still opts to be a closed bid. I would say, because as a buyer, I would always feel like I would want open bid to know where I stand.
You would want to know?
I would want to know.
I had another thought, and that is, as a buyer on a budget, you know that you can only come up to so much. And there could be buyers out there with deeper pockets. We're assuming now that the market's going to get super healthy and competing bids is going to be a problem. I don't want as a buyer, to be used as leverage to get more money out of the next guy. So there's a downside there too with transparency. Sometimes the buyers were protected by it, by the closed bidding.
And there is an element of buyers out there that they were flat out, I'm not competing. I'm not getting involved in this, even though we just sold a property last week and it was in competing offers, but it wasn't the same way. Like it sold for what, a couple $1,000s over asking.
Yeah, it feels different now.
With conditions. Whereas many buyers might feel, I'm not getting involved in multiple offers because I'm not going to spend $50,000, $60,000. I'm not removing my conditions. That's not happening that much anymore. The fact that the closed bidding sometimes did limit the number of buyers willing to participate.
That's true.
But if it's open and you can just put your offer in, and there's no difference initially between 2 offers and 10 offers if no one's willing to go up higher than that.
Again, it's going to be really interesting to see where buyers fall on this issue when it becomes a reality. It's going to be a big change, because I think that's the biggest change in this new legislation is this transparency. Everyone thought they wanted it. Now let's see if they love it as much as they thought they would.
Yeah, and let's see how easy or difficult it is to implement it and which way sellers ultimately choose. So initially they were thinking about not giving sellers the option to choose how they wanted to sell it. Yeah, but here we are.
It's going to be a big change.
So as new legislation and new rules come out, we get more clarification, we'll likely do some more videos on these things.
We'll be back.
So that's what we have for today. But if you have any questions about TRESA, about what might change in the process, If you're thinking about maybe that's going to be the time when you're going to start looking at properties, we can be happy to answer any questions. We do have a link in our bio for Calendly. You can definitely click on that and set up an appointment with either Tanya or myself. Set up a time, we'd be happy to chat. You can always leave comments in the description below or in the comment section below, and we'll be happy to get back to you.
And if we don't have the answer to your question, we will find it.
Sounds good. All right, till next time. See you guys.
Thanks for joining us.